Hey, folks, good morning and welcome to another episode of Steelers Morning Rush. I'm Alan Saunders. It is Wednesday, November 6th. The Pittsburgh Steelers will have their first post-bye week practice. They had an extra practice on Monday, but this will be the first real practice of their Week 10 game week against the Washington Commanders. Will be today on the South Side at UPMC Rooney Sports Complex. I will be there, of course, for SteelersNow.com. So we'll have some practice videos, maybe some locker room interviews coming up here on the YouTube channel a little bit later. Then, of course, I'll be back here with Zachary Smith at around 6 o'clock to break down all the news of the day on Steelers Afternoon Drive. I want to do something a little bit different today, and I'm going to talk about what I already wrote, which I don't usually do, but I really liked this takeaway I had from yesterday's trade deadline, and I wanted to sort of explore it a little further. So I wrote a story. It's up at SteelersNow.com. Go there and check it out. You can read it, but I'm mostly going to talk my way through it here, so you probably don't need to. That's fine. And if you like this or you don't like this, let me know in the comments, whatever. I can do more of this or I can never do this again if you all hate it, whatever. So the Steelers made a move that everyone had been talking about them making yesterday when they traded for Mike Williams from the New York Jets, sent a fifth-round pick, probably a slight overpay. Talked about this a lot with Zachary Smith yesterday on the podcast here on the YouTube channel. And then they also made another move, trading for Preston Smith from the Green Bay Packers, in a move that I think for a lot of people was a head-scratcher. It certainly was for me. I did not have outside linebacker as even one of their most pressing needs. I would have thought nose tackle. In fact, I believe the Steelers were attempting to make a trade for a nose tackle. Just didn't seem like any became available as the clock was ticking down on the deadline. I thought interior defensive line was their next biggest need after wide receiver, especially considering DeMarvin Leal's out for the season, who plays a little bit of edge and a little bit of inside, and also Montravius Adams is on IR with that knee injury, and it seems like it's a fairly serious one where he's going to miss, maybe most of the rest of the regular season. And so instead, the Steelers go get Preston Smith, and it's really hard to understate how good of a trade this is. The Steelers sent a 7th-round pick for a guy who has never missed an NFL game in a 10-year career, has 63 starts, has started every game for the Packers in 4 years, had 8 sacks last year. This is a starter. This is not some scrub. And they got a starting edge rusher for a 7th-round pick, and it's such a good deal that they couldn't pass it up. That was my initial tweet yesterday. But I think, it deserves some more explanation, right? Why did they want that player in the first place? And I think it really comes to Andy Weidl. We've given Andy Weidl a lot of credit for what the Steelers did on the offensive line over the last 2 draft classes. With the drafting of Broderick Jones, Troy Fautanu, Zach Frazier, and Mason McCormick, the Steelers have really set the blueprint for the future of their offensive line through the draft, and that is exactly what Andy Weidl did when he was the assistant general manager of the Philadelphia Eagles before he came to Pittsburgh 2 years ago. And it makes a lot of sense. Andy was a former offensive lineman. That's why we've kind of given him credit for that. And it was an obvious part of the way the Eagles built their Super Bowl championship team and the team they still have to this day that is rather good. But another thing that those Eagles teams were known for was a ridiculous amount of depth on the defensive line, to the point where they didn't even really have starters. They had 2 waves of front 4 defensive players. When the Eagles went to the Super Bowl at the end of the 2017 season, they were playing 7 defensive linemen more than 40% of the time. 7 more than 40%. So it was almost like they had a 7-man rotation where those 7 guys played 50% of the snaps. And then, the rest of the time they would have had 1 fewer lineman. So a 7-man rotation. The Steelers, to this point in the season, have only played 5 linemen. That much, 40% of the time. TJ Watt's playing 90% of the time. And so what do you get by adding Preston Smith? Well, you get another edge rusher. You can put him with Highsmith. You can put him with Watt. You can put him and Nick Herbig together and give both starters a break. The Steelers can cut down the number of reps TJ Watt is taking on a regular game basis to keep him fresh over the course of the season and fresh through the course of a game. 90% snaps is not ideal for an edge rusher. He would be better if he played a little bit less. The second part of this is obviously it protects from injury if something happens to one of the other ones. But I think it's just the overall impact of having not just giving TJ a break, but then having a really good replacement. The idea that a defensive line that can come at you in waves. And I think the Steelers have that. The Steelers' second four-man defensive line right now includes Keanu Benton, Preston Smith, and Nick Herbig. That's better than some teams' starting defensive lines. And that's exactly what the Eagles had and have had as they've added guys like Jalen Carter to the mix over the last couple of years, have infused some draft picks in there. I still think the Steelers might want to kick the tires on a defensive tackle if they can find one to provide some depth while Monty Adams gets back from that injury. But other than that, man, this is a very, very stout front seven. And I think that Eagles blueprint is shining through for the Steelers right now. Obviously, to me, that Andy Weidl influence is why they want to make a move like this, because of how those Eagles defensive lines worked. And I think you're seeing the benefit of guys not having to play so much when you look at what the Steelers have with a guy like Cam Hayward, 35 years old, still playing at a really high level, but they have a really capable, really competent guy behind him in Keanu Benton who can take as many snaps as the Steelers want to give him. Not that they didn't have that in Herbig, but now they have two of that. And I think that makes it an even bigger part of what they want to do. Also, they just dealt with injuries. Herbig not back yet. Said he wants to practice today. We will see about that. If Nick Herbig does practice today, I promise you there will be video of it on this very YouTube channel in a little bit. I think this is the way they want to run their defense. They do not want to have four guys that play 90% of the snaps. They want to have 8 guys that are playing 50% of the snaps, and I think they're getting really close to that with this group they have. And obviously they have to keep building as they go into the future. Preston Smith, not likely to be a part of the future because of his contract. He's owed a lot of money for the next 2 seasons. None of it's guaranteed. A strong likelihood that he's either going to be cut or restructured after this season. But this is clearly something the Steelers have wanted. They tried to bring back Marcus Golden before he retired. This is something they want, and you can see the clear intention of Omar Khan, of Andy Weidl, in the way they want to build this team from the trenches out on both sides of the ball, and very specifically, the way they want it to look on defense with the second wave of pass rushers and run stoppers. Preston Smith really good against the run, in addition to being a pretty good pass rusher. That's it for now. Make sure you, like I said, like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications here on the YouTube channel. Always looking for show topics, especially for the morning rush here. So if you got something you want me to dig into, leave it in a comment below. And I will be back here with Smitty at 6 o'clock. So if you have questions for me and Smitty, you can dump them here. You can, leave it on one of the other videos on the channel, and we will get to them the best we can. Until then, thanks for listening, thanks for watching, and enjoy.